Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Andrew Tallents. I am the founder and managing partner of the Talents Partnership. We are proud to be partnering once again with Dan Wells, the founder of Grow CEO and Grow CFO, in the presentation of this series of 14 webinars about self-coaching. The webinars will be taking place on a fortnightly basis, and I will let you know about the next webinar at the end of today's session. This is the 12th in our webinar series, and today's topic is leadership team coaching. Before we get into the content of the webinar today, let's just take a few moments to settle into our own space and open our minds to learning something new about ourselves today. Think about any distractions that might come up for you in the next hour or so, and try and find a way to minimize those distractions. Let's just take a moment to settle into our space. We have an hour together today. I am going to share some content with you and get you to do some thinking about how you can become more effective at leading your teams by learning to coach them more effectively on a daily basis. This will take around 40 minutes, and then we'll have up to 20 minutes for Q&A. You don't need to write down what is on the slides today because we'll also post those online, but I do need to have pen and paper to hand as I'm going to ask you some thought-provoking questions later on in the webinar. I won't be looking at the Q&A box today, so as we go through the webinar, if any questions come up for you, then please write them in the chat box and I will do my best to answer them after the presentation has finished. Some of you may have technical problems during the webinar. If this happens to you, in my experience, it's best that you just exit the webinar and then rejoin, and you'll be able to come back in. I also know the Wi-Fi has been slow, so please bear with me. We might get some lag on today's webinar. But don't worry, if we do, we'll also be recording today's session and posting it onto the Grow portals, on LinkedIn and on my YouTube channel. So you can also review the webinar later at your convenience. Over the 14 webinars, we're exploring some different aspects of self-coaching. In previous webinars, we've explored the importance of self-leadership, the question, who am I? And we've also explored the question, why am I here? We have talked about the concept of essentialism, the disciplined pursuit of less, and how we can build our resilience over time. And we have explored the importance of building our emotional intelligence and how building trust in our key relationships can help us become more successful over time. We have also explored how important key stakeholder management is to a leader's success and learned how to hold ourselves and others to account more effectively. We have learned about becoming more aware of our self-limiting beliefs and how to manage them more effectively. And last time we were together, we explored the importance of creating space and becoming more effective as a leader. If you didn't manage to see any of those webinars, you can watch them on my YouTube channel. Just type in Andrew Tallents into YouTube and the whole webinar series is there for you to watch. I'm very fortunate to be able to coach ambitious leaders to help them fulfill their potential as human beings and be successful in whatever they choose to do in life. In our coaching sessions together, we explore many of the issues on this slide to enable the leader to learn how to start self-coaching over time so that they can sustain their success in the long term. Let's explore what self-coaching is. According to the International Coach Federation, coaching is defined as a partnership with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. Although the concept of coaching stretches back to when Socrates was around, in modern times, coaching has played a critical role in sports such as tennis, cycling, and football. But it was Tim Gallwey and Sir John Whitmore who took the movement of coaching from the sporting arena into the business world in the early 1970s. Tim Gallwey was coaching tennis students at the time, and he began to notice that what was going on in the minds of his students was actually hindering their learning. He started experimenting with ways of helping players learn by developing their awareness of the way they moved around the court and the way they hit the ball, not by specifically instructing them. He gave it the term the inner game, and he published his initial findings in The Inner Game of Tennis in 1974. Later that decade, Sir John Whitmore realized that these principles could be applied to business. He continued his research for a number of years, and in 1992, he published the book Coaching for Performance. The principles of his book are still used extensively in businesses today. My day-to-day coaching style is based on Gallwey and Whitmore's approach, and it's focused on enabling the leader to become more self-aware in the moment of how they can become more effective in their personal life, current role, and career management. During my coaching sessions with my clients, we identify ways that leader can take their learning into everyday situations. Specifically, they learn how to coach themselves in key moments in relation to decision-making and relationship building. I am enabling the leader to self-coach so that over time, they don't need to spend as much time with me. We define self-coaching as the process of leading one's own personal development through self-leadership and the support of others to help maximize their personal and professional potential. Through self-coaching, once as a leader, you have decided that you are going to lead yourself first, and you have worked out who you are and accepting of who you are, and you have worked out your true purpose in life, why you are here, and then you commit to an essentialist life, enabling you to really focus on those tasks and relationships that enable you to fulfill your purpose. You are then in a position to learn how to build your resilience over time. And as you do this, you can become more effective at managing your emotions, and you can choose to react in the most appropriate way as events happen around you. As you continue on your self-coaching journey, you also learn how to build trust with key stakeholders and hold yourself and others to account to influence your future success. You learn the importance of managing your own self-limiting beliefs to ensure you make the most of opportunities that are presented to you, and build your courage in your day-to-day decision-making. You also learn the importance of creating space in your day-to-day thinking, and be rather than just do. However, self-coaching takes much effort and time, and today we're going to learn about how we can self-coach ourselves to become more effective at coaching our teams. I tend to work with leaders at 3 different stages of their career. They're either newly appointed into an exciting leadership role, they are being successful in their current role and want to move up through the gears to achieve even more success, or they could be lost in their current role and can't work out why they are lost. They just lost their mojo. In any of these stages, it is critical for the leader to provide courageous and clear leadership to their teams. More and more leaders are discovering the benefits of using a coaching leadership style to improve the performance of their own team. This has been particularly relevant during the COVID pandemic, as we learn to lead remote teams more effectively. However, in my experience, many leaders choose not to coach their teams in their daily lives, as it often needs a focus on creating time for the team and planning in advance in terms of what you want from the team. When I start to coach a new client, I always ask them about the team they are leading today and how they intend to lead them more effectively. Most clients explain to me that they don't have enough time to prepare for team meetings properly, and that they tend to become very transactional in nature, looking back or forward rather than being in the present. They know they need to get more out of the meetings, but never get round to really thinking about it. When coaching leaders, I tend to find that the following issues get in the way of them adopting a coaching leadership style with their teams. When leaders are appointed into new roles, they are quite rightly pleased with themselves and under the impression that what got them to this point in the role will be good enough to help them progress further in the role. However, as leaders become more senior in organizations and are more in the spotlight, their actions are amplified and they cannot always behave as they did before. Rather than creating space for themselves to think about how the team needs to be led, they choose to keep their fingers crossed that everything will be okay, just behaving as they always have done before. Many leaders suffer from imposter syndrome and have low levels of self-confidence in their ability to lead their teams effectively. They choose not to take time out to think about what they are doing, as this calls for strong self-discipline and emotional strength. Others in the business around them begin to lose confidence in the leader as they feel disengaged and discouraged due to the behavior of the leader. The leader encourages others to be busy and hardworking rather than inspiring them to think before they do. Most of my clients make incorrect assumptions about what is important when they decide how to lead their teams effectively. Post-COVID, there is immense pressure to be visible and on call on Zoom meetings all day to ensure they stay connected to what's going on. Many leaders choose to do rather than think, but surely that is what the leader is getting paid for, thinking. They have a team that can do. The team is often looking for clear direction of what to do from the leader, and this clarity can only be created by adopting a coaching leadership style. In my experience, the leader rarely tests these assumptions, and it is not uncommon, and it's not common for leaders to ask key stakeholders for help in leading their teams more effectively. It is far easier for the leader to bury their heads in the sand and work towards goals that have been set without checking what the team really needs to achieve. Many leaders are uncomfortable showing vulnerability, as they believe this is a display of weakness. However, it has been proven beyond doubt that being human and vulnerable is one of the key ways in which we build trust and authenticity by asking others to help us address our fears. In doing this, we show we are human and that we need help. Asking our teams for help in how to lead them can create trust quickly. Team members can relate to us as human beings and want to help us to help them. As the leader is often not held accountable by their boss, board, or other stakeholders, there is a tendency to try and muddle through and hope for the best without holding themselves to account. As we will find out in the next few minutes, without taking a coaching leadership style, it would be very difficult to reach our full potential as leaders. We can only build true accountability into our leadership roles when we create space to think about how we are leading our teams, the decisions we are making, and changing our behaviors accordingly over the long term. As a consequence of all the above, the leader often chooses to spend their time managing tasks and people rather than leading, and avoiding spending time on developing their own coaching leadership style. Once a leader understands how to develop a coaching leadership style, it can lead to opportunities for further personal development. For example, a leader who takes time out to reflect on how effective a team meeting was last week can think about ways to improve the overall team performance in future meetings. Being vulnerable demonstrates how key stakeholders can help leaders to create the time to think about how the team needs to be led differently going forward. When things get tough or creative solutions are needed, they can rely on their stakeholders to help them focus on what is really needed to be successful in the long term. If leaders really understand how to develop a coaching leadership style, it enables them to think more deeply about their team's strengths and how to challenge them by taking them out of their comfort zones and building their self-confidence further over time. Once the leader begins to develop a coaching leadership style, it sets the whole tone for the rest of the organization and inspires others to become more self-aware of how they can create a leadership coaching style for their teams. By developing a coaching leadership style, leaders often build their own self-confidence and vulnerability, and this in turn enables them to become more decisive and courageous as a leader. It also enables them to rely on their teams more often, creating more time for themselves to focus on the essential tasks and relationships that only they can work on. I'm sure some of you are sitting there wondering about how we can actually develop a coaching leadership style in practice and become more effective team leaders. What does all this really mean day to day? Of course, as ever, it starts with the leader. The leader needs to be able to demonstrate that they are aware of the strengths and weaknesses of their team, and that they are willing to change their own leadership habits with the support of others around them. To achieve that, this sounds easy, doesn't it? As they are the ones that are committing to changing their habits around their leadership style. But as we all know, it is not that easy, particularly without support. When I work with my clients, we usually work in up to 6 areas of team coaching, depending on where they currently are with their own team. Most commonly, we work on how the leader enables the weekly leadership team meetings so that these can be as productive as possible. The leader takes time to think about how the current meeting works and what needs to change to actually gain a better outcome. Secondly, we often work on understanding the current team dynamics and raising the whole team's awareness of each other's preferred working styles and how to get the most out of each other. Even though many companies will be able to produce their purpose and value statements, they are often misunderstood by teams and don't always translate well in terms of leadership goals. It is often necessary for the team to develop their own team purpose and vision and values that enables a team to perform at the highest levels while operating within the wider organization purpose and values. The leader can play a key role in developing team purpose and values that each team member feels they help to create and therefore have more ownership of going forward. Once the team understands each other better and it is clear what the team's purpose and values are, the leadership team is better placed to work out what is missing in the way in which the team works together. I encourage leaders to work with Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions model to identify where the team is in developing a culture of psychological safety. This is a key step in moving towards the creation of a high performance team, But even if the team performs to the best of their ability, if they don't truly understand the wider system that they are operating within, they may end up working towards the wrong goals or serving the wrong stakeholders. I work with leaders to develop a systemic team coaching approach that takes into account external factors outside of the team's control. Finally, once all the above have been addressed at whatever point is appropriate, the leader can provide an ongoing coaching leadership style that enables the team to continue to be high performing in the long term. In the sporting world, of course, Liverpool Football Club are currently the best example where the manager is using his coaching leadership style to sustain the team's high performance over the long term. And that particularly grates with me because I'm a Manchester United fan, and they're not doing that. So let's take a look at each of these areas in turn. When working with my clients, I ask them how they run their weekly leadership team meetings, which become very common post-COVID. Most leaders respond with similar agendas that review the previous week in terms of operations and look forward to the coming weeks, anticipating problems and opportunities. I ask them to think about the purpose of the meeting and what needs to change about this. I ask the leader to communicate clearly to the team the purpose of the meeting and what outcomes the leader is looking for. I then encourage them to provide as much information to the team prior to the meeting. This information would help the team achieve the desired outcome if they read it and understood it. The leader makes it clear that each team member is expected to fully absorb the information prior to the meeting so that the team can fully utilize the time available to them within the meeting. I ask them to think about where the leader could delegate the chair role to another team member. Most leaders who try this are pleased to have a rest from the incessant chairing they're doing all day, and they usually end up over time rotating the chair role amongst each team member as they become more comfortable doing it. Although each team member can chair the meeting in their own way, the purpose and expected outcomes are still clearly stated by the leader, independent of who the chair is. The chair is also held accountable by the team during the meeting. Finally, I ask the leader to try and create a coaching leadership style within the dynamics of the meeting. We work together on creating time to think. You may recall that we spoke briefly about this in our last webinar. In this environment, the leader creates an atmosphere that encourages the following habits to enable team members to think more deeply and contribute more effectively to the team meeting. Attention is all about listening with respect, interest, and fascination. Incisive questions are ones that remove assumptions that limit ideas from the team. Equality is simply treating others as thinking peers, giving equal time and attention to each team member and keeping agreements and boundaries within the meeting. Appreciation is about practicing a 5-to-1 ratio of appreciation to criticism within a meeting context. Ease is all about offering freedom from rush or urgency. We have time. Encouragement is about moving beyond competition. We're all working together. Feelings is all about allowing sufficient emotional release to restore thinking without interruption. Information is about providing a full and accurate picture of reality as it is today. And place is all about creating a physical environment that says back to people, you matter, we want to hear your opinions. Diversity is all about adding quality because of the differences between us. But how would this look actually in practice in the team meeting? Whoever the chair of the meeting is would state the purpose of the meeting and the ideal outcome the team is working towards. This has been issued by the leader, but it's reiterated by the chair. For example, the purpose of the meeting might be to better understand how customers are responding to a new product or service in the market. The ideal outcome would be to make a decision today in the meeting on what changes need to be made to the product or service in the coming weeks. Every team member has this in mind and has done preparation with information provided, and the chair firstly asks each team member to speak in turn without being interrupted or challenged by the rest of the team. The chair asks each team member to say what is going well for them at the moment. Once a team member has finished speaking, other team members are able to question them by asking incisive questions to reveal and remove assumptions that that team member is making that are limiting their own ideas. So they're being supportive. Once each team member has spoken and been asked the incisive questions, the team breaks up into thinking partnerships, consisting of 2 team members, a pair. Each person in the pair thinks out loud for 5 minutes without interruption. And then they come back into the wider team, and each team member gets another turn to speak without interruption in relation to the purpose and desired outcome based on knowledge they've gained through the thinking pairs. Throughout, the chair encourages the sharing of the truth and relevant information, and throughout the meeting they also encourage the expression of feelings as they come up for others, and others aren't openly allowed to judge them when they're having these feelings. At the end, the chair summarizes what they have heard and how this informs the decisions that need to be made. And then the normal team decision-making process can take place, whatever that might be, whether that's a majority or a consensus. To conclude the meeting, the chair asks everyone what they thought went well in the meeting and what they respect in each other. It's a very simple concept. And even though the format of this meeting seems very different to the meetings that maybe you're having now, it does encourage higher quality thinking and gains a broader perspective as more views are expressed from within the group. Leaders often think that this kind of meeting will take longer than their normal meetings that last an hour. But in practice, giving team members more quality time to think and building on others' ideas and thoughts makes the meeting more productive and saves time later on. Leaders don't tend to take much time at really understanding their team members and how they interact with each other on a daily basis. By taking just one day out with the team, ideally off-site, the leader can share information with them gained from psychometric profiles or other information they've observed that will enable the team members to raise their own self-awareness of how they behave and what this tends to mean for the team dynamic. How does it impact others in the way they behave? Off-site away days enable the team to bond in a different setting, and team members can be more open about what they really need from their colleagues. Successful team away days encourage vulnerability and openness and result in the team feeling closer and more understanding of each other. In previous webinars, I have shared with you the discovery profile process. This enables each individual team member to understand how they tend to behave, why they behave like they do, and where their emotional intelligence levels are at the moment. There are many psychometric profiling tools on the market, but I would encourage you as a leader to work with tools that measure emotional intelligence, as this gives the best indicator around a team member's appetite for changing their own behavior. Once the team members understand their own behavior traits and why they behave as they do, they may want to commit to changing their behavior in some way in relation to other key team members. This could be around being less dominant around certain people, or just listening more. Whatever the behavior change is, working with an executive coach might help that individual team member to change their behavior over time. If the coach is effective, the team member will make more demands of the leader in giving them feedback and challenging them more on a daily basis. The leader can accelerate the behavior change by adopting a coaching leadership style in relation to that team member. Once the team members are working more effectively together, there may be opportunities for the leader to coach a particular relationship. This involves acting as an independent third party, observing the behaviors that are present in the relationship, and coaching each team member in how they may be able to make positive changes in the relationship. This is an effective technique, but needs the leader to listen, engage, and advise in equal measure. Once team dynamics have been improved and the team becomes much more effective at working together, they might need to understand what they are really working towards as a team. Too many organizational purpose and value statements are vague and don't mean much to team members. Leaders can run half-day workshops that enable the team to first understand more fully where the organizational purpose and value statements came from, so where they originated from and why, so they become a bit easier to relate to. And then the leader can encourage each team member to identify their own purpose and values through using creative exercises that take team members out of their comfort zones, but really get them to tap into what's important to them. These are thought through thoroughly and presented back by each team member, and then a creative team session, ideally using the time to think methodology process, works on identifying the purpose and values of the team. Once these have been established, it is important to gain buy-in from each team member, and the leader must design the accountability framework by which each team member will hold each other to account and live the purpose and values that the team have created. Once the team is more aware of each other and they have clarity of team purpose and values, the team is now ready to become much more aware of the dysfunctionality that exists within the team. Patrick Lencioni's work in this area is very powerful in moving teams towards being high performing, either by talking openly as a team about each of the phases of a team's development through the dysfunctionality pyramid, or by asking each team member to conduct a 5 dysfunction survey, which you can get from Patrick Lencioni's site, toptable.com. The team can become more aware of where they are now in relation to a high-performing team. For example, if the team discovers through discussion or the survey that there is an absence of trust within the team, they cannot move on to the next level of the pyramid until they create that trust. The team knows that they need to find a way to trust each other. And the leader can facilitate this by showing their vulnerability and going first in building trust, leading the way. If the team trusts each other, but there is no constructive conflict within the team, then the leader knows that they need to seek the conflict within the team and bring it to the surface. If the conflict is there within the team, but there is a lack of commitment from them in achieving its goals in line with its purpose and values, then the leader knows that what they need to do is force clarity and bring closure to commitments to other causes. This can be uncomfortable. If the commitment from the team is there, but there is avoidance of accountability, then the leader needs to confront difficult issues within the team and hold team members to account more effectively. If the team accountability becomes present, but there's still a lack of attention to results that are required, then the leader needs to enforce collective responsibility around outcomes, and this can be done through incentives and other levers that the leader has open to them. Once the team has moved through the various levels of the pyramid, the team has every chance to become high performing. However, as the team becomes more effective and self-aware, it starts to realize that there are external forces in play which are difficult to identify. They need to start to understand the entire system that they are operating within. We all work in various systems. The earliest system we became aware of is our family system. We learned the rules and the behaviors of the people in the system, and we worked out a way to survive or thrive within that system. We then moved into educational systems and worked out our place in that system, and this affected the way we behave. And then we moved into our first organization and we encountered yet another system, and again we adapted. The team needs to learn and respect the different forces that are in play in the system that they're operating in, so that they can perform as effectively as possible with all the insight that they can gain. Systemic team coaching enables the team to understand more about the complexities of the system they are working in. The leader works with the team in one of 5 areas, depending on the needs of the team at that time. For example, if the team is not clear what is expected of them, the leader needs to lead a team session on commissioning, where the team tries to gain clarity about the performance targets that are being set for them, informally and formally, by the various stakeholders. For example, Brighton and Hove Albion in the Premier League need to clearly understand what the board expectations are in terms of the number of points that the team is expected to gain in the Premier League this year, rather than just the team deciding what a good points total would be. It is very common for boards or owners of companies to avoid setting clear expectations. And in these cases, the team will need to put themselves in the shoes of their paymasters to try and create a range of expectations that they can then share with their stakeholders and gain input from them and their commitment to certain desired outcomes based on the various scenarios presented. This is an important factor in systemic team coaching, as a leadership team can be highly effective, but if they are not giving the shareholders or board directors or owners what they need, they will be seen as failures, even though they might feel very successful. Another important factor operating within the system are the various stakeholders that are not the owners necessarily. but they have an interest in the success of the leadership team. These could be customers, suppliers, anyone in the supply chain, employees, and this is where connecting is so important. Here, the leader creates an environment where the team identifies as many of their key stakeholders as possible, all those that have an interest in the team's success. And through creative coaching, they work out how each stakeholder feels about the way the team is operating. They can also gain 360-degree feedback from the various stakeholders to get some real hard data. For example, the team may be successful in creating a profitable range of products that regularly wins awards, surpassing recognized industry technical standards. However, if the customers don't like the way that the products are being distributed, then the products are likely to underperform in the market. By understanding more deeply about the various positions that stakeholders take during the year ahead, the team can gain real insight and change their behaviors or team approach accordingly. The co-creating element has similarities with understanding team dynamics, but also includes the assignment of key roles within the team, not just in terms of functional areas of responsibility, but roles to enable the team to become even more effective in achieving their goals. The clarifying element is similar to the work around creating purpose and values within the team, but it also determines the way in which the team is going to measure itself against its objectives. This will include key performance indicators and the ways in which they will be held to account by others, not just within the team. Finally, the way that the team keeps moving to become high performing over time is by developing an internal process for capturing the core learning from all the insight gained for the other 4 disciplines. The leader enables the team to learn how to self-coach in meetings and in daily interactions, taking into account all the systemic elements that are in play. Over time, this becomes a successful habit for the team and a natural way of behaving. Unfortunately, in reality, it is normal for team members to come and go within teams, and this makes the systemic team coaching approach even more challenging due to the understanding needed to be gained by the new team member when they enter the team. Successful systemic team coaching usually takes about 2 years to implement successfully, but the time invested leads to more effective, high-performing teams in the long term. As we can see, the road to developing a high-performing team is challenging. It's complex and uncertain, particularly in today's climate. Leaders can maximize their chances of success if they work on their own individual self-coaching with disciplined self-leadership. This then gives them the confidence to coach their own team effectively, which then builds confidence within the team, and the leader can set more demanding objectives for the team that will stretch them even further over time. To sustain this success, the leader will need to demonstrate courageous and vulnerable leadership and lead by example so that team members can learn how to become much more courageous and vulnerable themselves. So what is it that you can do as a leader to develop a coaching leadership style that will move your team closer to being high performing over the long term? The journey to forming new habits that enable you to develop a coaching leadership style is a long and challenging adventure. There will be times when you feel you are making breakthroughs. And then the next day, you are back to old habits. Of course, this is normal for all of us, and it does take time to create the space and time that is so important to developing a coaching leadership style. It starts with us, and then once we start to role model the right behaviors, we can support others who want to self-coach themselves. Over time, each team member can learn how to support each other, and team performance improves. Think about the next couple of weeks in your own life. Look for opportunities where you can lead your teams differently. Create time to think in your weekly leadership meetings. Decide what support your team really needs in the other 5 team development areas we've talked about today. What do they need from you? Think about how you can sustain the team's high performance over time. How can you make a difference in the way you lead yourself? And finally, ask others to support you as you practice changing your behaviors. I would like you all to take a couple of minutes now just to think about what we've been talking about and think about where you can start to take a coaching leadership style with your team to become much more effective. Think about your weekly meetings, the team dynamics, team purpose and values, the 5 dysfunctions of your team, systemic team coaching, and sustaining the high performance of your team. Think about all those areas and think about where you can make a difference with your team in the coming weeks. Where is it best for you to focus your energy at this time? Or if you're not in a role at the moment, think about your first few weeks in a new role and the team that you would inherit. Where would you spend the time? I'll just give you a couple of minutes just to think about that. As you're doing that, I just want to launch a quick poll just to see where the thinking is. So the poll is, where are you going to spend time with your team in the coming weeks? Or if you're new in a role, which areas of interest you most? You can multi-select these things, but it'd just be interesting to see which of you have areas of interest in these areas. I'll just leave that a couple more minutes to see if anyone else wants to poll. Okay, thank you for doing that. I'll show you the results, and this is pretty normal. So if you can take the time to think about the weekly meetings, 80% of you have said there that you'd be interested in doing that. And then the team purpose and values, again, very common in terms of trying to understand that in a bit more detail. So again, these areas, each of the areas are going to be different for each of you as you go through your coaching style with your teams, and it's useful to know all of them. But thank you for doing that. I'll just share the results with you so you can see. Okay. Thank you for doing that and taking time to think. So to finish, a quick summary of what we have covered in today's webinar. It is not easy to develop a coaching leadership style. I'd like you to think about becoming more aware of how you currently lead your team. Think about that deeply. How are you currently leading them? Spend more time with your team to really get to know what they need from you at this point. Again, spend time to understand, show vulnerability. Encourage your team to think more deeply about how and what they are doing day to day. And also take time to understand the system the team is operating in. To say thank you for signing up to today's webinar, whether you're live or watching this later on, I would like to make you an offer today. If you would like to learn more about how to develop a coaching leadership style in terms of your teams, including some of the techniques and systems we've talked about today with my support and challenge, then I would be more than happy to offer you a complimentary team coaching session with me in the coming weeks. We can do this remotely online. It's very easy to do with Zoom, as you know, or face-to-face. I don't mind, but I do have a limited number of these sessions available, so you can really experience the value of the team coaching with you leading it and me supporting you. Please contact me if this is of interest after the webinar today, and we can discuss next steps. For those of you interested in further reading, which I know a lot of you are, these are 3 books I would recommend that you read. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team is a really good book. It's a book that takes you through a story format about identifying the dysfunctions of the team. Time to Think is really worth having as a handbook for the weekly meetings, and then Coaching the Team by David Clutterbuck is, again, a really interesting read in terms of how you go about coaching a team from a leadership perspective, not from a coaching perspective, but from being a leader. So thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the webinar. We've got a few minutes left for Q&A. We're just going to announce the next webinar before we go into that. The next one focuses on the importance of creating a coaching culture across the whole organization. So if you're building this coaching leadership style within your team, how do you then get that into the whole organization? This will take place at 11 a.m. on the 15th of October, and I will send out an invite to you nearer the time. So I'm going to go into the chat box now, see if any questions have come up, and I know that some of you like to take some time to do this, so let's just go in. Thank you for the thank you. That's no problem. As we do have about 8 minutes, I'll just let people come in with their questions. If you don't have any questions, feel free to leave. I am putting this webinar up on online after today, but I'll just leave it a minute now to see if there's any questions. Of course, if after today you want to have a personal call with me to talk this through and have any questions that you want to go through, very happy to do that via telephone or by video. But thank you. There don't seem to be any questions at the moment. And I wish you a good day. Have a good time with your teams. And I hope today has made you think a little bit more about how you lead them. Speak soon.